All right. Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. As always, we like to first and foremost give all praises to the Most High AHAYAH, Yasha, Rawach, Qadash, Chakamawath, Brother Rawach. Excited to present a lesson today titled The Truth About Christmas. Bear with me here. I got this study in no particular order. Got some articles and things of that nature that we're going to go through. So it's going to be a Bible study, but we're not going to get heavy into the scriptures. Like Brother Qahal, yesterday he did a lesson. He pre-recorded it. It'll be available later on YouTube. It is titled The Truth About Christmas. Which God are you serving? So
conference muted.
So with that, the brother, he did an in-depth lesson going over the precepts and one moment.
Entry notice off.
The brother went over the precepts and things of that nature. So that will be available later. Please check our YouTube page, Servant to the Scattered Sheep. So with that, and Shabbat Shalom, sis. I didn't mean to put you on mute real quick. I forgot to get the conference line ready. But as always, we're going to go over our disclaimer here at Servants of the Scattered Sheep. We teach according to St. Matthew chapter 28 and verse 19. So we baptize and we teach all nations. We don't judge anyone or anything based off appearance, rather the inward character, spirit, and integrity of a man or a woman. So with that, the lesson for today is titled The Truth About Christmas. So I want to make this lesson very simple. Most High willing, something that brothers and sisters would share with their family. I'm going to try to keep it at a base level, but still appeal to those so that they can, go and do some research on their own. So we're going to start off with the one question I'm going to pose is, can you find Christmas in the Bible? Does the word Christmas in the Bible appear? For my brothers and sisters that I study, obviously, this is it's a question it's a rhetorical question. There's no answer to it. I mean, there is, but it's not the answer that people are going to want. So I'm on my Bible app right here. I just want to show everybody before we get started. Search these scriptures, and I typed in Christmas, and I have to show you sideways, but as you can see, and it's lucky about the brightness, but there's zero results when it comes to Christmas, right? It's lucky zero results when it comes to Christmas. So how is it that Christians hold this holiday so dear to their heart? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's some people that can't wait until the next Christmas, right after Christmas is done. You got some people that just they live for this holiday. And one of the things that it's funny is that you can't prove Christmas as what it's paraded around to be, as the birth of whom the world calls Jesus Christ, whom we know through the scriptures is named Savior, which is Yasha in the Hebrew. But you have the entire world celebrating this holiday that's found nowhere in the scriptures whatsoever, and they call it a Christian holiday. So how did this happen? How did we get to that point? So I typed in Christmas in a word search in the Bible app. Obviously it didn't pop up. So, brothers and sisters, let's go to Jeremiah chapter 10. I know Brother Q, he hit the scripture yesterday, but we're going to go over it again. Usually, people don't think of this scripture, especially Christians, when it comes to Christmas. Show me Christmas in the Bible. And the excuses will come as like, oh, that's in the Old Testament. We don't need to follow that, right? So let's get it. Jeremiah chapter 10. I'm going to read it in the King James, and then I'm also going to read it in the Hebrew English Tanakh. Also, I have with me the two Babylons. We're going to get a little bit out of that. And then I got a couple articles I want to share dealing with the Babylonian origins of Christmas, the Greco-Roman Saturnalia. This way brothers and sisters can be informed and share this stuff with their family. Most High willing. So here we are, Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 1. Hear ye the word which the Most High AHAYAH speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Most High, learn not the way of the heathen. Right? So we're going to prove through the scriptures that Christmas is a heathen pagan practice. Its origins are not in the Bible. But it actually is spoken of in the Bible. And if we follow the Bible, we'll stay away from it. So, thus saith the Most High, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the heathen are dismayed at them. So, great example. They had some sort of eclipse or some sort of thing that happened like 3 months ago, right? And it was this big old thing. They were selling glasses for it. I even forgot what it was called, but it was a big thing. And of course, the heathen, they're dismayed at that. They're looking at that, and the whole time in my spirit, I'm just like, man, who cares about this? It has no significance. It means nothing. Verse 3, for the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth the tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen, with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. It's kind of funny. This is starting to sound like Christmas to me. Starting to sound like a Christmas tree. Keep in mind, Prophet Jeremiah lived and wrote this hundreds of years before Christ was on the scene. So keep that in mind. They are upright as a palm tree. All right, and it's funny that it's mentioning palm tree of all trees, right? Because the children of Israel walked out of Egypt. This festival was also kept in Egypt. The Babylonians, they regarded, I think it was the evergreen tree or the fir tree. And the Egyptians, for this custom, they had the palm tree. Obviously, they were in a desert terrain. But it's funny that we look in the scriptures and the wording is pointing to show you that if you were to actually research a palm tree used in a Christmas celebration, you would come up with ancient Egypt. So all praise to the Most High for leaving these little gems and these little things that stick out that we can go back and look and research. It says, they are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born. Now, born is Old English for, just like we read earlier, that it's fastened with nails and hammers. So something that is born, B-O-R-N-E, is something that's stuck to the ground. It can't move. It says, be not afraid of it. It says, they must needs be born because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them. All right? So, when we see these things, don't, look at a Christmas tree and then, like you go to your grandma's house or something, or aunts or uncles, you see the Christmas tree there, you just start throwing it down and, maybe knocking over nativity scenes and things of that nature. It says, be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also is it in them to do good. So they're nothing. So remember that. Don't let these things upset you when you go to the store. You have to see the Christmas tree or you hear the greetings from the people. Don't let those things upset you. Don't be afraid of it either. He can't do evil to you unless you partake of it, of course. And it's not good for you either. But neither also is it in them to do good. These idols can't do anything. They can't do good or evil. They're there. I know Brother Q, when he did his lessons, he pointed that out. That I might touch on that a little bit, where it says, be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also is it in them to do good. So I'm going to stop right there. We're going to read the same thing, but I'm going to read it out of this right here. The JPS, Hebrew English Tanakh. This way we can get a little different wording than the King James. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. We're in the JPS, Hebrew English Tanakh. And it reads, hear the word which the Lord has spoken to you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, do not learn to go the way of the nations, and do not be dismayed by portents in the sky. All right, same thing. Don't go out of our way to go learn the ways of the other nations and how they worship their gods and things of that nature. We're not supposed to deal with that. And we're not supposed to be dismayed by the portents in the sky. The heavenly host. It says, let the nations be dismayed by them, for the laws of the nations are delusions. All right, remember the Most High says he's going to bring a strong delusion on the people. Here we have in the wording here in the JPS Tanakh, it says, the laws of the nations are delusions. And that's a beautiful way of thinking things when you're dealing with the legal system and it makes no sense. And they try to reduce who you are as a man and put you under a title. That's a whole other topic. But For the laws of the nations are delusions, for it is the work of a craftsman's hands. He cuts down a tree in the forest with an axe. He adorns it with silver and gold. He fastens it with nails and hammers, so that it does not totter. They are like a scarecrow in a cucumber patch. They cannot speak, they have to be carried, for they cannot walk. Be not afraid of them, for they can do no harm, nor is it in them to do any good. So, pretty much the same thing we read, right? But I want to jump down a little bit. Or it's like, I'm going to just keep going. We're in the JPS Hebrew English Tanakh. It says, O Lord, there is none like you. You are great, and your name is great in power. Who would not revere you, O King of the nations? For that is your due. Since among all the wise of the nations and among all their royalty there is none like you. But they are both dull and foolish. Their doctrine is but delusion. Once again, their doctrine is but delusion. And it is a delusional holiday when you look at what they're trying to say it is, and in reality what it really was as to what they try to say it is today. It says their doctrine is but delusion. It is a piece of wood, silver beaten flat, that is brought from Tarshish, and gold from Uphaz, the work of a craftsman and a goldsmith's hands. I'm gonna go ahead and stop right there. As you can see, the wording similar. There's a little more I wanted to get out of that, but for time's sake, I want to stay on topic here. So with that, got that at Jeremiah chapter 10. Like I said, brothers and sisters, I have this in no particular order. As we're doing this, I'm going to be, figuring out what direction I want to take this as I'm led by the Spirit. Let's see here. So I'm going to read a little bit of this out of the Two Babylons. It is by Alexander Hislop. It's a good book to get. I don't recommend getting this version. I recommend getting a different version because there are some pictorials in here. And in this version, all the pictorials are in the front. And in the wording, they're given a number, and you got to look up back and forth, so it'd be easier to get a different copy. But this is a good book to have. It breaks down every single aspect of the Roman Catholic Church from ancient times, and then how they integrated into Christianity and things of that nature. So definitely a good book. Recommend getting it. A lot of good info in here. We're going to get this section right here. It's chapter 3, Festivals, section 1, Christmas and Lady Day. And we're going to read a little bit out of here. And I'm going to touch on the different cultures that celebrate Christmas, like Babylonian, Egyptian, the Greeks, the Romans, things of that nature. So we're just going to go ahead and read through it. If you're catching this on the conference line, we're going to be doing some reading, so just be prepared. If you're catching this later on YouTube or something, on a day that's not the Sabbath or whatever, definitely something you want to listen to while you're doing something. So let's get it. It says, if Rome be indeed the Babylon of the Apocalypse, and the Madonna enshrined in her sanctuaries be the very Queen of Heaven, for the worshipping of whom the fierce anger of God was provoked against the Jews in the days of Jeremiah, which we just read, Jeremiah chapter 10, it is of the last consequence that the fact should be established beyond all possibility of doubt. For that being once established, every one who trembles at the word of God must shudder at the very thought of giving such a system, either individually or nationally, the least countenance or support. Something has been said already that goes far to prove the identity of the Roman and Babylonian systems. But at every step the evidence becomes still more overwhelming. That which arises from comparing the different festivals is peculiarly so. The festivals of Rome are innumerable, but 5 of the most important may be singled out for elucidation: Christmas Day, Lady Day, Easter, the Nativity of St. John, and the Feast of the Assumption. Each and all of these can be proved to be Babylonian, and first is the festival in honor of the birth of Christ, or Christmas. How comes it that the festival was connected with the 25th of December? There is not a word in the scriptures about the precise day of his birth, or the time of the year when he was born. What is recorded there implies that at whatever time his birth took place, it could not have been on the 25th of December, at the time that the angel announced his birth to the shepherds of Bethlehem. They were feeding their flocks by night in the open fields. Now, no doubt, The climate of Palestine is not so severe as the climate of this country, but even there, though the heat of the day be considerable, the cold of the night from December to February is very piercing, and it was not the custom for the shepherds of Judea to watch their flocks in the open fields later than about the end of October. So here you have it. It would not make sense. During that time, the shepherds would not have been out. It would have been too cold. But if you have this book, or if you don't, I recommend get it. You can Google it online. I'm sure there's a free PDF. You can get more in depth into looking up each and every single one of these holidays. We're going to jump down here. It says, how then did the Roman Church fix on December the 25th as Christmas Day? Why thus, long before the 4th century and long before the Christian era itself, a festival was celebrated among the heathen at that precise time of the year in the honor of the birth of the son of the Babylonian queen of heaven. And it may fairly be presumed that in order to conciliate the heathen, and to swell the number of the nominal adherents of Christianity, the same festival was adopted by the Roman Church, giving it only the name of Christ. This tendency on the part of Christians to meet paganism halfway was very early developed, and we find Tertullian, even in his day, about the year 230, bitterly lamenting the inconsistency of the disciples of Christ in this respect, and contrasting it with the strict fidelity of the pagans to their own superstition. By us, says he, who are strangers to Sabbaths and new moons and festivals, once acceptable to God, the Saturnalia, the feast of January, the Brumalia, and the Matronalia are now frequented, gifts are carried to and fro. New Year's Day presents are made with din and sports, and banquets are celebrated with uproar. Or how much more faithful are the heathen to their religion, who take special care to adopt no solemnity from the Christians. Upright men strive to stem the tide, but in spite of all their efforts, the apostasy went on, till the church, with the exception of a small remnant, was submerged under pagan superstition. That Christmas was originally a pagan festival is beyond all doubt. The time of the year and the ceremonies with which it is still celebrated prove its origin in Egypt, the son of Isis, the Egyptian name by which Christmas is popularly known among us, Yule Day, proves at once its pagan and Babylonian origin. Yule is the Chaldean name for the infant or little child, and as the 25th of December was called by our pagan Anglo-Saxon ancestors, it's not my ancestors, but I'm just reading, Yule Day or Child's Day, and the night that preceded it, Mother Night, long before they came in contact with Christianity, that sufficiently proves its real character. And it's not by coincidence. So, a couple weeks ago, I was shopping at Winco, and on the way in, sometimes they have pallets stacked with wood, camping, fire logs and things of that nature. But this time, they had Yule logs. You know what I'm saying? So they don't even hide this. It's right in front of your face. Same terminology and everything. We're getting to a point where there's no excuse as to why no one can't see the true origin of Christmas. So with that, we're going to jump down a little bit. Here we are. It says, far and wide in the realms of paganism was this birthday observed. This festival has been commonly believed to have had only an astronomical character, referring simply to the completion of the sun's yearly course and the commencement of a new cycle. But there is indubitably evidence that the festival in question had a much higher reference than this, that it commemorated not merely the figurative birthday of the sun in the renewal of its course, but the birthday of the grand deliverer. Among the Sabaeans of Arabia, who regarded the moon and not the sun as the visible symbol of the favorite object of their idolatry, the same period was observed as the birth festival. Thus we read in Stanley's Sabaean philosophy, on the 24th of the 10th month, that is December, according to our reckoning, the Arabians celebrated the birthday of the Lord, that is the moon. The Lord Moon was the great object of Arabian worship, and that Lord Moon, according to them, was born on the 24th of December, which clearly shows that the birth which they celebrated had no necessary connection with the course of the sun. It is worthy of special note, too, that if Christmas Day among the ancient Saxons of this island was observed to celebrate the birth of any lord of the host of heaven, the case must have been precisely the same here as it was in Arabia. The Saxons, is well known, regarded the sun as a female divinity and the moon as male. Pretty interesting that they even highlight the Arabians, because when you look at Christianity or Catholicism, right, like Catholicism and even Islam, they share certain things. When you actually look into the history of Islam, you can see that Islam was started by the Roman Catholics. But they pretty much worship the same deities, except the Arabians, they deify the moon, of course, Greco-Romans, the sun. But we can see the theme here. Let me see here. It must have been the birthday of the Lord Moon, therefore, and not of the sun, that was celebrated by them on the 25th of December. Even as the birthday of the same Lord Moon was observed by the Arabians on the 24th of December. The name of the Lord Moon in the East seems to have been many, for it appears the most natural interpretation of the divine statement in Isaiah. But ye are they that forsake my holy mountain, that prepare a temple for Gad, and that furnish the drink offering unto many. There is reason to believe that Gad refers to the sun god, and that many in like manner designates the moon divinity. So here we have in the scriptures this thing being talked about. Gonna jump a little bit around here because there's a lot in this. I don't want to bore my brothers and sisters with a lot of reading here. Right here, let's see here. All right, so I'm going to jump a little bit here. So most distinguished Sanskrit scholar brings the Brahmins from Babylon. Be it observed, the very name Surya, given to the sun over all India, is connected with this birth. Though the word had originally a different meaning, it was evidently identified by the priests with the Chaldean zero, and made to countenance the idea of the birth of the sun god. The Prakrit name is still near the scriptural name of the promised seed. It is Suro. It has been seen in previous chapter that in Egypt also the sun was represented as born of a goddess. It was no mere astronomical festival then that the pagans celebrated at the winter solstice. That festival at Rome was called the Feast of Saturn, and the mode in which it was celebrated there showed whence it had been derived. The feast is regulated by Caligula, lasted 5 days. Loose reins were given to drunkenness and revelry. Slaves had temporary emancipation, and used all manner of freedoms with their masters. Subsequently, the number of days of the Saturnalia was increased to 7. So this we can skip a little bit. Let's see here. Alright, so I think that's all I wanted to get out of there. There's a lot in there, a lot more in there, but for time's sake, we're going to go ahead and cut a little bit from that portion here. I'm now going to get into this article here, mysterybabylon.org, if you'd like to follow me along. This article is titled The Christmas Connection. And like I said, we weren't going to really do an in-depth Bible study. We're going to go over a few scriptures and, get some history of some articles, things of that nature. So if you want to follow me along, all praise to the Most High. If not, we'll go ahead and get this here. So I'm going to just go ahead and start reading it. It says, as most of us know, Christmas is the celebration of a birthday. But who's for sure? Could it have been Jesus, or could it have been someone a lot older and a lot more pagan? Interestingly enough, the date of Christmas is approximately 9 months after the time of the Easter pagan celebration. 9 months. Does that sound like something familiar? Following that train of logic, could Christmas then be the celebration of a pagan birth 9 or so months after this time? Possibly. And if this could be so, might this holiday be in actuality the commemoration of a birth of some pagan Babylonian god, not the son of the Creator? We already understand the role Nimrod and the sun god had on Easter. So there's another article that they tie in this article with, so that's what it's referring to. This is interestingly enough, in this time of birth, we'll discover even more about the pagan sun god, his viceroy Nimrod or Tammuz, and one more to be remembered and embraced as part of this all. So this is a quote from Aurelian, the Roman Empire. And it reads, Aurelian strengthened the position of the sun god Sol Invictus as the main divinity of the Roman pantheon. His intention was to give all the peoples of the empire, civilian or soldiers, Easterners or Westerners, a single god they could believe in without betraying their own gods. So as we can see, these festivals were used, to centralize everybody's pagan beliefs and to kind of herd them all into one, which was the adopted state religion of Catholicism in ancient Rome. So apparently, as we see above, changes were about to take place in the ancient Roman Empire. This would be shortly before the time they were to adopt Christian values and behaviors as their own. We see that in the year 274, after the Roman emperor declared the god named Deus Sol Invictus of this as the official deity. Aurelian also built a splendid temple of the sun in Rome and set the sun's birthday celebration, Naturalis Solis Invicti, on December 25th. And that quote comes from a book titled The Shocking Pagan Origin of Christmas. December 25th, it's asking a question. Could this particular date have originated with more of a pagan tone here as well? Did this December birthday originate as a celebration of the sun god's viceroy Tammuz, not anything Christian? Many who understand religious history know that in the early 4th century, Emperor Constantine became the emperor of Rome, who allowed Christianity to flourish for the first time, and eventually Rome would be adopting it as their official religion. Yet overall, things didn't seem to change very much in the empire itself. It seems, as we'll see, this proclamation really didn't seem to change what the pagan populace would think about their pagan gods at first. Far from it. It says, in 313, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which commanded official toleration of Christianity and other religions. Constantine's program was one of toleration only, and he continued to support both Christianity and paganism. And this comes from a book titled Conversion of Constantine. Constantine becomes a Christian. Now, isn't that funny that here in America, right, here we have Constantine over here in Rome issuing the Edict of Milan, saying that you're going to tolerate Christianity and other religions, right? And then here in America, you had, the so-called Puritans fleeing over here for religious freedoms, right? And what they don't tell you is that when they write those laws about these religious freedoms, it's to have a back doorway to let Satanism creep in as a religion. It's no different. There's nothing new under the sun. So, let's see here. This is in the time of Constantine, the cult of Deus Sol Invictus was still at its height. And this was something that they struck on their coins. I don't need the picture for that. So we see by looking at an actual coin of the approximate period, the image of Constantine and a crowned pagan god holding a globe in his hand on the right was still to be etched into his coinage. The former worship would still continue on as one form or another. This solitary god's name was Deus Sol Invictus, which means the god of the sun who was unconquered, the unconquered sun god. The sun god's viceroy, Tammuz or Nimrod, of course, could also be considered unconquered because, as we know, he was first considered a martyred moral. The sun god brought him back to life. So thanks to the sun god, Tammuz was never conquered by death, not completely. He was a god now, the one who actually did the conquering over death. And the time of his birthday would be celebrated on December 25th, 9 or so months after the time of his conception at Easter. We have the following admission regarding Christmas, and this, once again, this is a quote from The Shocking Pagan Origin of Christmas. It says, December 25th was referred to in documents as Christmas Day in AD 324 for the first time, under the Roman Emperor Justinian, AD 527 through 565. It was recognized as an official holiday. An old Roman festival played a major part in the choice of this particular day. So it's not by coincidence. And December 25th in ancient Rome was the Dies Natali Invictus, the birthday of the unconquered sun, the last day of the Saturnalia. So it seems this Christian holiday definitely does have a pagan foundation and really didn't lose it that much. But what about today and more pagan elements around in our modern celebration of Christmas? Did they eventually disappear? And what's this above celebration of Saturnalia? So later on we're going to get in depth into Saturnalia. We're going to describe just exactly what it is. this is going to elaborate a little bit on this. His first Saturnalia was an ancient pagan festival which began each year around December 17th. It extended all the way to the day of December 25th. On the actual 25th, the holiday became known as Brahmalia, the sun's or revived sun's birthday. And at the conclusion of this festival, Roman authorities believed they could destroy most of the forces of darkness and evil if they celebrated it the right way, of course. So if we think about it, why would almost anyone in charge want to erase all of this working order just for the sake of some up-and-coming faith, Christianity, especially if they worshipped other gods in the past? So now we are beginning to see that the birthday of December 25th was at first celebrated as that of the reborn pagan god of Babylon, Nimrod. And as one could guess, this practice must have spread beyond this early time of Babylon to the rest of the ancient world, and this, of course, includes ancient Rome. Just as with the holidays of Easter and Halloween, new names would be inserted for these original gods of Babylon, according to each empire or nation which adopted it. And just like Easter and Halloween, this festival also seemed connected to the cycles in nature, such as the changing of the seasons. So, as one could guess, it's just another part of this same founding Babylonian story of old in ancient Rome. However, the time was coming for Christianity, for my stuttering here, in ancient Rome, however, the time was coming for Christianity to be on an upswing. And as one could guess, competition would spring between these pagan ways of old and something new. Survival was in order. So just real quick, I want to point out that these festivals that these pagans have is to commemorate the changing of the seasons, right? Well, when we look in the book of Enoch and in the book of Jubilees, the Most High actually commands us holy days for the new moon of that season. So it's no coincidence that here we see, the wicked one trying to duplicate what the Most High does. So let's get back to this quote here. It says, there was also another pagan belief during the same epoch that much more nearly competed with Christ for the control of the Western world. This was the cult of the sun, which was revered by millions of inhabitants of the Roman Empire, and its religion, for a time, even became the state worship. Once again, it's another quote from the shocking pagan origins of Christmas. That's a good book to go over. By looking at all of the above, almost anyone could conclude Christmas wasn't originally Christ's day, but an amalgamation of sorts, Christian shell, pagan underbelly. And what about some of the other famous elements of this day, such as the Christmas tree? Are they Christian or something more? Where did this come from? Obviously, we read in Jeremiah chapter 10. Probably the most famous image that comes to mind when one thinks of the Christmas holiday is the Christmas tree. But why does this holiday merit us to put up a tree? What do trees have to do with Christ? That's a good question, because how are you going to have a phallic symbol in your living room and you're honoring Christ? That makes no sense. What do trees have to do with Christ or with his death, burial, and resurrection? The answer, most probably nothing. What if anything would putting up a tree do with pagan beliefs or pagan gods? The answer, most probably everything. Let's see. You can go ahead and mock. It's all good, man. They're not going to really pay attention to that. So you can wish all the merry whatever you'd like. The Queen Semiramis told the worshippers that when Tammuz, aka Nimrod, was killed, some of his blood fell on the stump of an evergreen tree, and the stump grew into a full new tree overnight. This made the evergreen tree sacred by the blood of Tammuz. So obviously we see the Christmas tree really comes from an old Babylonish fable telling of an evergreen tree which sprang out of a dead tree stump. This obviously symbolizes dead Nimrod, and the new evergreen tree symbolized how he had come to life again as the reborn, unconquered God. It clearly seems that a tree, especially an evergreen, was a pagan symbol of the God born on this day, and since the evergreen tree never seemed to look as though it dies because it stays green all winter, it became the perfect symbol of a martyred God, reborn on this day. Now we also have the connection of this holiday to the season of winter because Nimrod, reborn, was said to have come out of the underworld, a place of the dead, similar to the dark, death-like surroundings the cold of winter gives us. Many of the plants used at Christmas are symbols of fertility. Certainly any evergreen tree, fir, yew, or laurel, with its ability to return verdure in barren months is appropriate. So I'm assuming it's talking about different types of evergreen trees and the certain trees that can keep its greenness to it. Those are the ones that they use the most. It says, again, we see it all comes from a pagan origin. With all this paganism about, could the Bible have a little something to say about the use of plants such as this in these ways? Yes, the Christmas tree, interestingly enough, may have been among those pagan elements condemned by the word of the Most High. Let's see how. All right, so I'm going to read what I already read in the book of Jeremiah. We're going to go back to Jeremiah chapter 10. We're going to start at verse 2. It says, Thus saith the Most High, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth the tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen, with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree. It seems the Bible does condemn this practice here, probably because it comes from another older pagan ritual from Babylon. Could the entire nativity of Christ have been there to absorb this pagan holiday of old? During the early times of the church, could this holiday of the winter solstice actually have been the day of the nativity of the Son and Him alone? It's sad, but probably true. People today might think they are celebrating the true Savior when taking part in Christmas celebrations, when they are in actuality continuing the celebration of some false Savior, another older pagan Jesus. This could also help us to understand better why the Apostle Paul wrote to Corinthians to beware of the subtle deceit of another Jesus whom we have not preached. So we're going to go to 2 Corinthians chapter 11, and we're going to get verse 4. Once again, that's 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 4. It reads, For if he that cometh preacheth another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if ye receive another spirit, which ye have not received, or another gospel, which ye have not accepted, you might well bear with him. So just consider this for a moment, right? Because this is in the New Testament. And clearly we can see that Christmas is nowhere in the Bible, has nothing to do with Christ, has nothing to do with Yasha, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus. He never preached that, he never taught that, so it was never part of the gospel. And it's funny, here we have Paul writing in this epistle that if someone comes along and preaches another Jesus whom we haven't taught, and you receive another spirit that we haven't received, and another gospel, pretty much that's what Christmas is. Teaching about another Jesus, another Christ, right? They receive a different spirit because they're now in the quote-unquote holiday spirit, right? And it's a whole other gospel. It's a whole other story. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear anybody can see this. So going back to this article, in actuality, Paul claimed that if we receive or give a favorable ear to these other elements, which may be mixed in with Christian thought and tradition without calling them out for what they were, the other elements would probably be able to endure or hold up well in combination. They would be able to sustain themselves as a pagan Christian fusion just nicely, and as we see, it exactly has. Also, it would not really be easy to get rid of these other older elements of our hybrid holidays, since they became entrenched in this way. Again, this is exactly what has happened and what continues to go on today. How many of us really know about these pagan infusions into our Christian celebrations or really care? Yet these combinations were brought to us way back to the time of the 4th century AD. And they are still present and continue. So I'm going to get some more quotes from The Shocking Pagan Origin of Christmas. It says, when Constantine became emperor of Rome, he nominally, at least, became a Christian. But being the head of a far-flung political empire, he was concerned about the unity and coherence and stability of his empire. As a sagacious politician, he sought to reconcile and blend and mesh pagan practices with Christian beliefs to merge paganism with the Roman Church. From that time, the Church became totally subverted by politics and self-seeking opportunities. We're going to get another quote from that same book. This is, the Church moved to incorporate the birthday of the sun god into the so-called Christian calendar and converted his birthday into the birthday of the Messiah. It was now called Christian, but in truth, it still had a pagan heart and core. So where does this all lead us? Again, it puts this holiday in the same boat as the pagan holidays of Easter and Halloween. And when confronted by paganism in their midst, things often turns out the same way. Let's see. Christianity, this is another quote, Christianity did not destroy paganism, it adopted it. And if you look at mainstream Christianity today and you really do your research, you're going to see that that statement is very true. Paganism was not really defeated by the church. It invaded the church, infiltrated it, and seduced it from within. The professing Christian church became the new face of paganism. Only the names were changed, and in some cases, as in Easter Sunday, and the old pagan names were left in place, which Easter, Ishtar. I mean, it's right in our faces. It always has been. Christianity was the last great creation of the ancient pagan world. This tendency on the part of Christians to meet paganism halfway was very early developed. Let's see here. And why does the story seem to continually come to the same pagan-Christian fusion? Of course, the real reason is it's all about power and domination over others, the personal power and ego gratification of leaders, certain religious leaders above us, no matter what faith one might be adhering to. And I'd like to point out that it all leads back to the same wicked power source, and that is the fallen one. He is the God of all the religions of the earth. The Most High Creator, AHAYAH. He is the only true living God, power of the nation of Israel. I'm going to skip this little bit of this article. But, here's some great quotes. Here's Mark chapter 7, verse 9. Full well you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your own tradition. That's happening. That's been happening this whole month. It's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen on Sunday. Thus have you made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition, but in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. It's crystal clear. Christ prophesied about these things. Let's see here. I might stop this article here. There's a couple other things I want to highlight that deal with the actual celebrations. So, give me one moment here. Skip that one. So here I'm at another article here, and there's a couple things I want to skim through, just to get people to actually think about things. So when was Jesus born is what it reads. I'm going to read it as it is. So a popular myth puts his birthday on December 25th in the year 1 CE. The New Testament gives no date or year for Christ's birth. The earliest gospel, St. Mark's, written about 65 CE, begins with the baptism of an adult Jesus. This suggests that the earlier Christians lacked interest in or knowledge of Jesus' birthday. The year of Jesus' birth was determined by Dionysius Exiguus, a Scythian monk, abbot of a Roman monastery. His calculation went as follows. So here, now you're going to get some understanding on why this date was picked, other than the Constantine Council of Nicaea. In the Roman pre-Christian era, years were counted from ab urbe condita, the founding of the city. Thus, 1 AUC signifies the year Rome was founded, 5 AUC signifies the 5th year of Rome's reign, etc. Dionysius received a tradition that the Roman Emperor Augustus reigned 43 years and was followed by the Emperor of Tiberius. Luke 3:1-23 indicates that when Jesus turned 30 years old, it was the 15th year of Tiberius' reign. If Jesus was 30 years old in Tiberius' reign, then he lived 15 years under Augustus, placing Christ's birth in August 28th year of reign. Augustus took power in 727 AUC. Therefore, Dionysius put Jesus' birth, or Christ's birth, in 754 AUC. However, Luke 1:5 places Christ's birth in the days of Herod, and Herod died in 750 AUC, 4 years before the year in which Dionysius places Jesus' birth. And when you go into the Zondervan Bible Dictionary and you actually look up the birth of Jesus, it actually highlights that discrepancy of 4 years that we just went over. Joseph A. Fitzmyer, Professor Emeritus of Biblical Studies at the Catholic University of America, member of the Pontifical Biblical Commission, and former president of the Catholic Biblical Association, Writing in the Catholic Church's official commentary on the New Testament, writes about the date of Jesus' birth. Though the year of Jesus' birth is not reckoned with certainty, the birth did not occur in AD 1. The Christian era, supposed to have its starting point in the year of Jesus' birth, is based on a miscalculation introduced 533 by Dionysius Exeges. The De Pascha Computus, an anonymous document believed to have been written in North Africa around 243 CE, placed Christ's birth on March 28th. Clement, a bishop of Alexandria during 215 CE, thought Christ was born on November 18th. Based on historical records, Fitzmyer guesses that Christ's birth occurred on September 11th, and it's by no coincidence. There's plenty of information out there if you do the research. Pretty much things have been narrowed down to September 11th. There was a sort of thing that happened. When we read in the book of Revelations, it describes a certain astrological thing going on. It has nothing to do with astrology. It's just something that was prophesied. And that thing actually happened on a September 11th, give or take, 2,000 years ago, around the time when Christ would have been born, which is no coincidence why they picked 9/11 also to perpetuate the wide-scale witchcraft of the false terrorism and things of that nature. So it's by no coincidence that they picked these dates. They know what's been going on since the very beginning. So we're going to get into the second part of this article here, and it's titled, "How Did Christmas Come to be Celebrated on December 25th?" And it reads, Roman pagans first introduced the holiday of Saturnalia, a week-long period of lawlessness celebrated between December 17 and 25th. During this period, Roman courts were closed, and Roman law dictated that no one could be punished for damaging property or injuring people during the week-long celebration. Like to highlight that kind of sounds like The Purge, that movie that came out. Pretty much you could damage stuff and people and not be held accountable. So the festival began when Roman authorities chose an enemy of the Roman people to represent the Lord of Misrule. Each Roman community selected a victim whom they forced to indulge in food and other physical pleasures throughout the week. At the festival's conclusion, December 25th, Roman authorities believed they were destroying the forces of darkness by brutally murdering this innocent man or woman. So this is Saturnalia. They take some poor soul, some poor person, and for a week they give them the best food and and they have them indulge in physical pleasures throughout the week, right? Just so on the 25th, they can kill him. It's wicked. But we get into the origins of Christmas. This is the origins of Christmas. All right, so it's like it. Like that. So now we're going to get into another section. This is the ancient Greek writer, poet, and historian Lucian, in his dialogue entitled Saturnalia, describes the festival's observance in his time. Now, we're not going to talk about or describe anything that's graphic, but there was rape that did occur during this time. So I just want to put that out there. It is, still something pretty strong if there's children present, but let me start at the top again. It says, the ancient Greek writer, poet, and historian Lucian, in his dialogue entitled Saturnalia, describes the festival's observance in his time. In addition to human sacrifice, he mentions these customs: widespread intoxication, going from house to house while singing naked. That's the origin of your Christmas carols, right? Rape and other sexual license. So once again, we just read that in Rome the courts were closed. You can damage property and you can injure people. So these things it was okay to do this. And consuming human-shaped biscuits, still produced in some English and most German bakeries during the Christmas season. It says, in the 4th century CE, Christianity imported the Saturnalia festival, hoping to take the pagan masses with it. Christian leaders succeeded in converting to Christianity large numbers of pagans by promising them that they could continue to celebrate the Saturnalia as Christians. The problem was that there was nothing intrinsically Christian about Saturnalia. To remedy this, these Christian leaders named Saturnalia concluding day, December 25th, to be Jesus' birthday. Christians had little success, however, refining the practices of Saturnalia. As Stephen Nissenbaum, professor of history at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, writes, in return for ensuring massive observance of the anniversary of the Savior's birth by assigning it to this resonant date, the Church for its part tacitly agreed to allow the holiday to be celebrated more or less the way it had always been. The earliest Christmas holidays were celebrated by drinking, sexual indulgence, singing naked in the streets, a precursor of modern caroling. The Reverend Increase Mather of Boston observed in 1687 that the early Christians who first observed the Nativity on December 25th did not do so thinking that Christ was born in that month, but because the heathen Saturnalia was at that time kept in Rome, and they were willing to have those pagan holidays metamorphosed into Christian ones. Because of its known pagan origin, Christmas was banned by the Puritans, and its observance was illegal in Massachusetts between 1659 and 1681. However, Christmas was and still is celebrated by most Christians. So, kind of strange that it was outlawed. Some of the most depraved customs of the Saturnalia Carnival were intentionally revived by the Catholic Church in 1466 when Pope Paul II, for the amusement of his Roman citizens, forced Jews to race naked through the streets of the city. An eyewitness account reports before they were to run, the Jews were richly fed so as to make the race more difficult for them, and at the same time more amusing for spectators. They ran amid Rome's taunting shrieks and peals of laughter, while whom they call their Holy Father stood upon a richly ornamented balcony and laughed heartily. So we know that these Jews that are spoken of in 1466 are the Hebrew Israelite tribe of Judah. These were men of color that, they were doing this to. Okay, so let's get a little more of this. It says, as part of the Saturnalia Carnival throughout the 18th and 19th centuries CE, rabbis of the ghetto in Rome were forced to wear clownish outfits and march through the city streets to the jeers of the crowd, pelted by a variety of missiles when the Jewish community of Rome sent a petition in 1836 to Pope Gregory the 16th, begging him to stop the annual Saturnalia abuse of the Jewish community. He responded, "It is not opportune to make any innovation." On December 25th, 1881, Christian leaders whipped the Polish masses into anti-Semitic frenzies that led to riots across the country. We'll go ahead and stop right there. We're going to get into the origins of Christmas customs. We touched on that with another article we read, but I'm going to go ahead and get some from here. They might touch on something that we missed. So, the origin of the Christmas tree. Just as early Christians recruited Roman pagans by associating Christmas with the Saturnalia, so too worshippers of the Asherah cult and its offshoots were recruited by the church sanctioning Christmas trees. Pagans had long worshipped trees in the forest or brought them into their homes and decorated them, and this observance was adopted and painted with a Christian veneer by the church. So, this pagan had long worshipped trees in the forest and had been doing this, so that's why it was written of in Jeremiah chapter 10. We're going to get the origin of mistletoe now. This is Norse mythology recounts how the god Balder was killed using a mistletoe arrow by his rival god Hoder while fighting for the female Nanna. Druid rituals use mistletoe to poison their human sacrificial victim. The Christian custom under kissing under the mistletoe is a later synthesis of the sexual license of Saturnalia with the Druidic sacrificial cult. So just, you're standing under the mistletoe, you have to kiss. Sexual license. An example, right? You got your typical Caucasian family sharing Christmases together, right? And maybe you have one husband and one wife married to different spouses. The spouses aren't each other, and they happen to be under the mistletoe. Someone points it out, like, now you have to kiss. And it would be inappropriate for them to kiss because they're married and not to each other. But because it's the mistletoe, it's the so-called quote-unquote holiday season, the people will let that slide and let them kiss, giving, a minor sexual license. But as we can see, that's just a window look into what was really going on. And some of the stuff that was going on, we can't mention it. The origin of Christmas presents. So we're going to get this now. It's not because the three magi or three wise guys brought Christ gifts. This is in pre-Christian Rome. The emperors compelled their most despised citizens to bring offerings and gifts during the Saturnalia in December and calends in January. Later, this ritual expanded to include gift-giving among the general populace. The Catholic Church gave this custom a Christian flavor by rooting it in the supposed gift-giving of Saint Nicholas. Now we're going to get into the origin of Santa Claus. So, it says Nicholas was born in Parara, Turkey in 270 CE and later became Bishop of Myra. He died in 345 CE on December 6th, and he was only named a saint in the 19th century. Nicholas was among the most senior bishops who convened the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE and created the New Testament. The text they produced portrayed Jews as the children of the devil who sentenced Jesus to death. All right, so they're putting in their own opinions and thoughts along with that. So we're going to skip some of these things where they're putting their own opinions, and we're just going to stick to the meat that we want. In 1087, a group of sailors who idolized Nicholas moved his bones from Turkey to a sanctuary in Bari, Italy. There, Nicholas supplanted a female boon-giving deity called the Grandmother, or Pasqua Epiphania, who used to fill the children's stockings with her gifts. Come on. The Grandmother was ousted from her shrine at Bari, which became the center of the Nicholas cult. Members of this group gave each other gifts during a pageant they conducted annually on the anniversary of Nicholas's death in December of 6. So these people, they worship this man, and that's where you get these gift giving from. The Nicholas cult spread north until it was adopted by German and Celtic pagans. These groups worshipped a pantheon led by Woden, their chief god, and the father of Thor, Balder, and Till, also which the day Wednesday is named for. Woden had a long white beard and rode a horse through the heavens one evening each autumn. When Nicholas merged with Woden, he shed his Mediterranean appearance, grew a beard, mounted a flying horse, rescheduled his flight for December, and donned heavier winter clothing. In a bid for pagan adherents in Northern Europe, the Catholic Church adopted the Nicholas cult and taught that he did distribute gifts on December 25th instead of December 6th. Let's see here. You can skip some of this here. But I'm going to get this one little footnote here. It says in 1931, the Coca-Cola Corporation contracted the Swedish commercial artist Haddon Sundblom to create a Coke-drinking Santa. Sundblom modeled his Santa on his friend Lou Prentice, chosen for his cheerful, chubby face. The corporation insisted that Santa's fur-trimmed suit be bright, Coca-Cola red, and Santa was born, a blend of Christian crusader, pagan god, and commercial idol. So as you can see, the Coca-Cola company had great influence in commercializing whom the world today sees Santa Claus. The red came from the Coca-Cola red. I just wanted to point that out because we live here in America. It's part of American culture, and some other stuff I want to point out. Actually talking about that as well, how Christmas got to be so commercialized. So I see we're about an hour into this lesson. Like I said, we weren't going to really get into too many scriptures. We were just going to touch on some historical things. But I am going to cut this short. There might be a few more things I might want to get, but we pretty much covered a lot. We're going to touch on some of this. Okay, so it says an ancient holiday. The middle of winter has long been a time of celebration around the world, centuries before the arrival of a man called, they got Jesus here. Early Europeans celebrated light and birth in the darkest days of winter. Many peoples rejoiced during the winter solstice when the worst of the winter was behind them, and they could look forward to longer days and extended hours of sunlight. In Scandinavia, the Norse celebrated Yule from December 21st. The winter solstice through January. In recognition of the return of the sun, fathers and sons would bring home large logs which they would set on fire. The people would feast until the log burned out, which could take as many as 12 days. The Norse believed that each spark from the fire represented a new pig or calf that would be born during the coming year. The end of December was a perfect time for celebration in most areas of Europe. At time of year, most cattle were slaughtered so they would not have to be fed during winter. For many, it was the only time of year when they had a supply of fresh meat. In addition, most wine and beer made during the year was finally fermented and ready for drinking. In Germany, people honored the pagan god Odin during the midwinter holiday. Germans were terrified of Odin, as they believed he made nocturnal flights through the sky to observe his people and then decide who would prosper or perish because of his presence. Many people chose to stay inside. So here we go. Saint Nick is making a list. You can see who's naughty and nice, right? That's where they got it from. So now we're going to get into Saturnalia. So in Rome, where winters were not as harsh as those in the far north, Saturnalia, a holiday in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture, was celebrated. Beginning in the week leading up to the winter solstice, continuing for a full month, Saturnalia was a hedonistic time when food and drink were plentiful, and the normal Roman social order was turned upside down. For a month, slaves would become masters, peasants were in command of the city, business and schools were closed so that everyone could join in the fun. Also around the time of the winter solstice, Romans observed Juvenalia, a feast honoring the children of Rome. You can only imagine what's going on in that feast. Knowing that the Greco-Roman culture was a pederastic society. A pederastic society is a society that's built off of man and boy relationships. They see those as the relationships, right? And they'll just use the women to carry the children. That was common in the Greco-Roman culture. So you could just imagine what type of wickedness was going on during that time. Because in addition, members of the upper classes often celebrated the birth of Mithra, the god of the unconquerable sun, on December 25th. It was believed that Mithra, an infant god, was born of a rock. For some Romans, Mithra's birthday was the most sacred day of the year. In the early years of Christianity, Easter was the main holiday. The birth of Jesus was not celebrated. In the 4th century, church officials decided to institute the birth of Jesus as a holiday. Unfortunately, the Bible did not mention date for his birth, a fact Puritans later pointed out in order to deny the legitimacy of the celebration. Although some evidence suggests that his birth may have occurred in the spring. Why would shepherds be herding in the middle of winter? Pope Julius I chose December 25th. It is commonly believed that the church chose this date in an effort to adopt and absorb the traditions of the pagan Saturnalia festival, first called the Feast of the Nativity. The custom spread to Egypt by 432 and to England by the end of the 6th century. By the end of the 8th century, the celebration of Christmas had spread all the way to Scandinavia. Today, in the Greek and Russian Orthodox churches, Christmas is celebrated 13 days after the 25th, which is also referred to as the Epiphany or Three Kings Day. This is the day it is believed that the three wise men finally found Jesus in a manger. By holding Christmas at the same time as traditional winter solstice festivals, church leaders increased the chances that Christmas would be popularly embraced, but gave up the ability to dictate how it was celebrated. By the Middle Ages, Christianity had for the most part replaced pagan religion. On Christmas, believers attended church, then celebrated raucously in a drunken, carnival-like atmosphere similar to today's Mardi Gras. Each year, a beggar or student would be crowned the Lord of Misrule, and eager celebrants played the part of his subjects. The poor would go to the houses of the rich and demand their best food and drink. If owners failed to comply, the visitors most likely would terrorize them with mischief. So this article is from history.com, and as we can see, they kind of, they Disney down a little bit of what was really going on. They don't tell you that the so-called Lord of Misrule was going to then be sacrificed. So we're going to get here. It's an outlaw on Christmas. Christmas was outlawed here in America. So in the early 17th century, a wave of religious reform changed the way Christmas was celebrated in Europe. When Oliver Cromwell and his Puritan forces took over England in 1645, they vowed to rid England of decadence, and as their part of their effort, canceled Christmas by popular demand. Charles II was restored to the throne, and with him came the return of the popular holiday. This is the Pilgrims, English separatists that came to America in 1620 were even more orthodox in their Puritan beliefs than Cromwell. As a result, Christmas was not a holiday in early America. From 1659 to 1681, the celebration of Christmas was actually outlawed in Boston. Anyone exhibiting the Christmas spirit was fined 5 shillings. By contrast, in the Jamestown settlement, Captain John Smith reported that Christmas was enjoyed by all and passed without incident. After American Revolution, English customs fell out of favor, including Christmas. In fact, Christmas wasn't declared a federal holiday until June 26, 76. So there you have it. So now we're going to get into how Christmas was reinvented and Americanized to be accepted over here. So this part is titled Irving's Reinvents Christmas. It wasn't until the 19th century that Americans began to embrace Christmas. Americans reinvented Christmas and changed it from a raucous carnival holiday into a family-centered day of peace and nostalgia. But what about the 1800s piqued American interest in the holidays? Actually, we're gonna go ahead and skip that part a little bit. Everybody, you can go to history.com, get history of Christmas. For time's sake, we're gonna skip that. There really wasn't too much that stuck out to me. But just real quick, A Christmas Carol is a Christmas movie, right? And, they use things like that to get people in the Christmas spirit. They use Christmas movies, Santa Claus imagery. For those that aren't really Christian and those that are Christian, they play on their emotions with the birth of Jesus and the whole nativity scenes and things of that nature. Another way they play on you is, everybody's getting gifts. You got to get your kids some. There's so many ways that they play into getting this thing commercialized and accepted by everyone, from a minute scale to a grand scale. Let's see here. Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and... I thought this article had more on the reinventing Christmas, but I was mistaken. But with that, I want to read this real quick. This is from Carnival.com. This is talking about the Saturnalian festivities, and this is just a little idea of what happened. It says, among Christians, the word Saturnalia came to mean orgy. So, orgy and Saturnalia, the Christmas celebration, right? The origin of the Christmas celebration. Saturnalia and orgy, their words were synonymous with each other. They meant the same thing. And orgy just meant secret worship, but it came to be known something today that we, I don't need to expound on that anymore. But it says the word orgy comes from the Greek word orgia, meaning secret worship. Since most secret worship involves sexual rituals, and Christians were opposed to anything sexual, the word orgy came to have the debased meaning it has today. And here, these wicked people say, rather than the noble spiritual meaning of the original word. So here they try to, make it like something good because these people are wicked. But you got to go to the horse to get it straight from the horse's mouth. It says, many words that are used to describe extreme religious fervor are also used to describe. Okay, we're going to pass that. All right. So there were many orgies throughout the year as celebrations in the religion of the goddess. Many of these celebrations have been taken over by the Christians who removed their sexual nature. The best known is undoubtedly Christmas, taken from the pagan festival of Saturnalia. All right. It says, in Roman times, Bacchus, the god of wine, became the lord of these festivals. During the Bacchanalian festivals, the everyday rules were turned topsy-turvy. All right. So good was made bad, bad was made good. The masters waited on the servants. All sexual prohibitions were lifted. It was a time of true goodwill towards all men. You see how they try to say that by removing sexual prohibitions that men can actually have true goodwill. It's like it says, even dresses were exchanged with men dressing as women. No coincidence. Erotic dances were performed with a large erect phallus being carried around the dancing professionals. And they call them professionals, right? Because they're showing you the origin of these strip clubs and why they're dancing around poles, because that pole is symbolic of a phallus. Just like that Christmas tree in your house is symbolic of a phallus. It's just like an obelisk and things of that nature. When we look at the origins of these holidays, everything is of a sexual nature. It's a lot of phallic worship that's going on. The fact that, and Brother Q, he touched on this last night, or yesterday, but you got to go before that tree that's symbolic of a phallus in your living room, and you got to bow before it, all right, to pick up that gift to give to someone. It's all there. We touched a lot. I don't want to touch on anything else. But that quote that I just read, it came from Mary Ellen Tracy, High Priestess of the Egyptian Church of the Most High Goddess. So, from the horse's mouth, they're telling you what these days represent, what they originally meant. And these people do these things on those days. So you can't just take something, try to Christianize it, give it a Christian name, and it's all good and it's accepted by the Most High. Salakia. It doesn't work that way. So with that, we're going to touch on a few scriptures real quick, and then we're going to bid everybody a higher speed. But my brother Q, he did a lesson yesterday, and a couple things I want to touch on. We want to go to Amos chapter 5 and verse 21. Once again, we're going to go to Amos chapter 5 and verse 21. And it reads, I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them, neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts. Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy viols. Now, I was taught this, right, from the Christian perspective of the Old Testament's done away. See, the Most High says, I despise your feast days, so we don't do Passover and all those things anymore. We do Easter, we do Christmas, we do, right? But in actuality, what it's speaking of, the Most High is saying, I despise your feast days. He didn't say his feast days that he gave us in Leviticus chapter 23. He said your feast days. And whatever pagan festivities that our people were practicing during that time, whether they were in Babylonian captivity or the Medo-Persian captivity, it's quite clear the context of that scripture. It's just funny. It was given to me with a different twist on it when I was unlearned. But all praises to the Most High that we have understanding. And got one more scripture I want to leave everybody with. Make sure that's the one I want to leave. Yeah. I want to leave everybody with this scripture right here. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8. Once again, Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8. And it reads, Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. So, we can see how we have been spoiled in the past through philosophy and vain deceit. It was philosophized why December 25th could be celebrated as Christ's birth, because we're honoring that he came into the world. And even though we don't know what day is, we're honoring that he came into the world. That's philosophy, and that's vain deceit. After the tradition of men, the original man that started this tradition, or that the tradition was fashioned over, was Nimrod. This is a tradition of man, Nimrod. After the rudiments of the world, we just went and read how throughout the earth it was celebrated differently. We touched on Babylonian, the Roman, and then a little bit how it was celebrated here in the Americas. I had so much information that I wanted to share with everybody. It's just hard fitting it into a time slot. But I have a lot of articles here that I didn't even get to go through. But you know what? We're gonna Slacky. I said we're gonna leave it off with Colossians 2 and 8. But we are gonna go ahead and we're gonna start with St. Matthew chapter 15 and verse 6. Once again, St. Matthew chapter 15 and verse 6. Or Slacky, we're gonna jump down to verse 8. And it reads, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So we teach our people, and we teach Christians and things of that nature, people that ascribe to the Bible, but just also might celebrate Christmas. Like, hey, wait a minute, the scriptures, like what Christ said, is spot on. You say you're close to the Most High with your mouth, you're honoring him with your lips, but your heart is far from him. So when we tell you, hey, Christmas is A, B, C, and D, it's Saturnalia, it's this, it's that, and you're like, well, I do it because I want to honor that Jesus came into the world, or whatever their excuses, right? So the heart is far from the Most High, because if it was with Christ and the Most High, anything pagan would be dropped in a heartbeat. I'm reading at verse 9. It says, "But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." So with that, I'm going to bid everybody a higher speed. I just want to apologize to everybody. This lesson could have been a lot more well put together and organized. I didn't have as much time as I wanted to actually put this study together. Most High willing, take some time to actually put it together more in depth and more in order, and maybe redo this lesson, or have a PDF document available for those that are interested. You can send us an email at scattersheep@yahoo.com, and we can send you a PDF with all the precepts. But with that, we give all praises to the Most High, AHAYAH, Yasha, Rawach, Qadash, Chakamawath. That is the Most High in Christ and the Holy Spirit wisdom. Brother Mala'ak with servants of the scattered sheep. Brothers out there in the Bay Area, the brothers that you see teaching on here, brothers go out and street preach. And it's almost a weekly thing. All praises to the Most High that our brothers are out, be able to hit the bar station in Richmond or out in Vallejo or different areas. So all praises to the Most High brothers is out there. If you would like to meet up and things of that nature, please reach out to us at scattersheep@yahoo.com. And if you're in the Bay Area, you want to meet with the brethren, go out and hand out flyers and declare the kingdom is at hand. Contact us. I'm located in the Reno, Nevada area with Brother Tony. He can't be with me today, but we're going to start going out and hitting these streets. So if you're in any of our areas, please contact us. If you're looking to get out there and do some work, we do everything in decency and order, but we will work with our brothers and sisters. We fellowship. We're open to fellowshipping with everybody. That's the thing with the servants of the scattered sheep. We don't call ourselves a camp or a church. Rather, we are a family-oriented, Bible-based group. And what we mean by Bible-based, we understand that this book is the book of our forefathers. We understand that we are, in fact, the Hebrew Israelites that the Bible speaks of, and that we suffered the curses that are under Deuteronomy chapter 28. With that, we're going to go ahead and conclude this lesson. And this lesson will be available later, most likely tomorrow on YouTube. And there's over 100 videos on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, our conference line is 302-202-1110. Once again, that's 302-202-1110. If you have any questions or comments concerning exactly, it's like I'm reading my wife's comment, but exactly on point with it. Slacky, I forgot what I was saying. But yeah, there's hundreds of videos up on YouTube, so subscribe to us. You can catch all the lessons that you missed. If you're new to Servants of the Scattered Sheep, there's plenty of information you can go back and study. Also, if you have any lesson requests, certain topics that you would like for us to touch on, send us an email at scattersheep@yahoo.com, scattersheep@yahoo.com. And if a brother is moved to touch on that topic and led by the Spirit, then praise to the Most High, we'll touch on that. But with that, I want to bid everybody a high speed. Kwam Yasharala. The season of the heathen is almost over. With that, take this opportunity, for those that are new in the truth, take this opportunity if you are invited to a feast. There's nothing wrong with going to a feast if you are bid to come. Just, they might not want to partake in the food. And you want to do this with sharing the truth in mind. That's the purpose of going to any type of thing of that nature. Once you have this truth, is you want to share it. And you want to do it very delicately. You want to do it in the spirit of meekness, humility, and love. And remember that you were invited to their feast day because they love you, and you're going over there and tolerating it so you can teach them because you love them and you love the Most High ultimately. With that, I want to bid everybody a high speed. Kwam Yasharala, Most High willing, we will be back next week. Don't know exactly what we're going to be touching on. I know Brother Amar, he's been working on a study on marriage. That'll most definitely be an edifying study, so I can't wait for that. Most High willing, it might be next week or following week. With that, Kwam Yasharala, Shabbat Shalom.